Hello listeners, and thanks for joining me for another episode of 177 Nations of Tasmania podcast. Spain is a country that most associate with sunshine and hot weather, and people speaking Spanish. But there is a region in the northwest of Spain with a climate not unlike Tasmania's. Yep, a little bit cool and wet, and where the people speak their own language. Galicia is the region where my guest for this episode, Carmen, grew up, and she did her studies in marine ecology. She came to Launceston, Tasmania initially to do postgraduate research for 2 years, but 15 years later she works as a sustainability officer at the University of Tasmania's northern campus. So what made her stay, and how does Tasmania compare to Galicia? Listen on and find out.
I grew up in a city called Ferrol, and that's in the region of Galicia in Spain. It's a small town, probably the size of Launceston, but European style, so up rather than wide. And I grew up in a suburb that was a bit outside of the city, so even if I lived in a block of 44 apartments, we had plenty of space there to, as a kid, go out and be with your friends and play and all that. And we are very social in Spain, so we like to be with other people.
Oh, just explain a little bit more about where Ferrol is in Spain and the region that it's in.
Yeah, so it's in the northwest of the northwest region. So that's in the Atlantic side, close to the Cantabric Sea. I don't know how it's in English, Cantabric Sea. So just that separation from the sea that's between France and Spain, and then the Atlantic Ocean on the other side. So that's where I come from. The weather is very much like Tasmanian weather, okay. So we are pretty much at the same latitude, but north, obviously. And we get all the cold and wet fronts from the Atlantic. So in that sense, I didn't notice a big difference, I have to say.
Well, that's good, because a lot of people do have a problem with the Tasmanian weather.
Yeah, and everybody thinks of Spain as this hot place where we only eat paella and watch toros, and that's not the case. Spain is a very diverse country, even if small compared to Australia, but definitely very different. And the region where I come from, we have Celtic origins, so everybody's surprised when I say we play bagpipes, but yeah, it's the traditional musical instrument. In Galicia, we have a geographical feature that's called rias, and it's a bit like the fjords in Norway, but the origin is a bit different, the way they were formed. So you have this like bays all around the coast, and there's a lot of towns that are close to the coast, obviously, for that reason, and because we as humans tend to go that way. I could see the sea from where I was living.
So the town, is it what do people mainly live from? Is it like traditionally a fishing town, or are there other things?
It's shipyard town. It used to anyway.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a bit of a maritime history,
Yeah, and there is a Navy station as well. So my dad was in the military, and being next to the sea was nice. So my grandparents had a house in a small village close to Ferrol. That's where we will go in the summer and play and do things and go to the beach and that kind of thing. From living in Ferrol, actually, I've always been a book person.
Okay.
So I will live focused on my books and my studies. I've always been like that.
What kind of student were you at school? What did you enjoy at school?
Oh God, I was the teacher's pet. I just really loved learning. I learned to read before going to school when my older sister was learning, and no one could stop me after that. And I was the kind of person that would voluntarily do extra homework and do homework over summer and read of all kinds of stuff. And I was a good student. I obviously, that's a bit of privilege that I think I had the brain for it. But I loved it. I always loved it. And I remember the first day I was dropped at school by my mom. I just forgot about my mom immediately and started talking about with other kids. And
was there the particular subject that you were good at or enjoyed more than others?
Yes and no. I've always been more inclined towards sciences, and that's the way I went. But to be honest, I would have been equally happy doing something in the humanities or arts, not so much. Humanities. I love languages as well, and always try to learn other languages.
You obviously did a lot of reading, if I've got that right.
Yeah. And novels and
Okay, because I was going to ask, was it mainly fiction or non-fiction?
Mainly fiction, but I did like studying, so all that learning history or literature or all those things. I also enjoyed that part, and I might have done some extra reading on the side, but I was more focused on fiction, and specifically, not that much as a kid, but as a teenager, science fiction and fantasy. I've always been a bit of a nerd. My older sister had a lot of influence in that sense, she was the one buying books before I was, so I would get my hands on those, and I obviously liked it, otherwise I wouldn't have kept reading them, but yeah.
And so when you were at high school, maybe, did you have some sort of plan or idea of what you wanted to do in the future?
Well, I've always thought I would follow an academic path because I, obviously was good at it, and so I always thought I would go to university. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do at university, but I suppose that last year I was in high school, a couple of years before that, they started this new degree on marine sciences that supposedly had a lot of, future, and and I believe it could have had, but so that's where I ended up doing marine sciences. But as I said, I could have go any other way, really. And then when I was finishing my degree, which was a 5-year degree, I thought at some point trying to find a job, but I honestly didn't feel prepared. I think that probably happened to everybody who finishes that degree. And because I liked, the academia and all that, I went the postgrad way and spent a few years doing a master's by coursework and master's by research and PhD. So it took me a while to go through all that, but I really enjoyed it. And talking to other people who has done a PhD, not everybody had a good experience, but I was very lucky, I think, with the project, but also my supervisor that I admire, I suppose, as a scientist, and she was a guide in the personal area as well. So, and after that is this big emptiness when you do a PhD and you finish, and especially in Spain, it's a bit different than here. Like, students here are working, or most students are working throughout their degree and postgrad studies. But in Spain, that's not the usual. You will focus on what you are doing. And I had scholarships that allowed me to do that. And once you submit, you kind of get this emptiness and panic of, what do I do next? So I was thinking, what did I do next? And at some point, also with personal things going in terms of, partners and things like that, at some point I thought I would actually look for a job, and teaching in a school maybe could have been a good option. But then I started looking at the option of doing a postdoc, and got this fellowship to go overseas, and that's how I ended up here. After looking at a few options around the world, I have to say my first preference would have been Hawaii.
Okay.
Yeah. but the researcher that I contacted there didn't have room for me at the time.
Okay.
So Australia was second best. And that's how I ended up here.
So you had various options and...
Driven by the researcher I wanted to work with,
Okay.
but also with the thought that this was an opportunity to go to a place that I would probably not go in other circumstances because it's so far away. Not thinking I will stay.
Yeah.
It was a 2-year deal at the time. So, those two things combined.
What got you into studying marine ecology in the first place? Was it, or was it just
pure chance? It sounded nice. I like the sea. Who doesn't, right? And then it's this, these memes that are online that how other people see you, and then how you see yourself, and how others see you. How do you see a marine ecologist? Working with dolphins, right? So I suppose I didn't have a clear idea of what I was going to be doing, but when you think of, marine biology, you think, oh, nice, fun, dolphins, whales, you name it. And then I ended up working with this animal that no one knows that exists. So anyway, that happens. The degree itself was very interesting because it covered, in 5 years you can cover a lot. It covered anything and everything related to the marine environment, from biology, physics, chemistry, policy, economics. So it was a very comprehensive degree. And then in the last 2 years, you would choose a major. And I went the, biology side of things, but everything was interesting, to be honest. I always say this, and people who knows me think that I'm wrong, but I'm not a passionate person. Like, okay. I don't feel strongly about many things or anything. And, same way I could have gone the humanities way with the marine sciences, I could have gone, I don't know, the geology way, or, have to make a decision at some point. I obviously don't regret it, but I don't think I would have regretted going a different way.
What were your first impressions of Tasmania when you arrived here?
I thought that the social life was very different. And especially in Launceston, when you see no one after 5 in the street, that was quite, I don't want to say depressing, it wasn't depressing, but you know what I mean? Like, it was like, oh, where is everybody? I don't know, like, this time in Spain, we will be all going out to have coffee with friends, or not every day, but
I must admit, even coming from Hobart, Launceston on the weekend seems very quiet.
Yeah, we are all eating somewhere. That's my experience now, that, we have really good places to eat around Launceston. I enjoy that. I think I came at the right time in my life. Okay. Because I was, 31 when I got to Tasmania. So I had left all my wild animal party life behind, and I was ready for something different. And I really like Launceston and surroundings, like the gorge, for example. Where do you have that in a city anywhere else, right? So I was happy, but I missed a bit the social life. And obviously I didn't know that many people at the time when I first arrived, so that also was a factor, I suppose. Apart
from it being quiet, were there any cultural differences that you had to adjust to?
There is one thing that I keep repeating to people in this country, and it's just that, and let's put it in a positive way, you are way too nice. Meaning that you are very, very reluctant to provide any kind of feedback that is not super positive. That's been my experience anyway. But for me, that means that when someone gives me feedback, I don't trust them. I don't believe it. Tell me the bad things as well. There's no way that everything was good. So, but yeah, I call that being too nice.
Okay, yeah, that's a nice way to put it. I 100% know what you're talking about. I have the same feeling many times. I feel like I was born in the wrong country sometimes. So people often from European countries can seem a bit direct to Australians.
Yes. And I've toned my style down a lot.
Okay.
But, sometimes I still resurfaces, so it comes up. And some people find it very confronting, especially when they don't know you.
What was your experience of the university like, especially in Launceston, where it's a smaller campus?
I didn't have much experience actually working at a university before. My research group here was smaller than it was back in Spain, so that was a difference, and it was an important one because I would go to do sampling and I was on my own. That would have never happened in Spain. We always helped each other, but it was just not enough people here to come all the time with me. But that's just because of the size of the research team, not necessarily related to the university. As a researcher, you live in your world and you don't look much around, so I was just doing my thing.
And what made you stay longer?
Yeah, so funny story. I met this guy. Actually, a friend of mine introduced me to this guy that she had met once, and she said, "This guy is perfect for you." And apparently she was right. So that was at the start of my second year, which was gonna be my last year. And by the end of the year, I was struggling with the idea of staying because I never thought I would. And I don't know any Spanish person who doesn't want to go back to Spain.
Okay.
But, love won, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I talked to my supervisor and asked if there was a possibility of getting some work, and he offered me a job at the time. So I took it and stayed, and I was working a bit more as a lecturer then, still doing some research for a little while.
It's not enough just to have a job or, to have work here. You need something strong, more emotional.
Yeah. And it's listen, it's not easy to find the right person, and when you find it, and whatever the other person is. Well, obviously there was a conversation there about what we were gonna do, but it made sense to stay for both of us. So.
But if you had gone back to Spain, what would you have done?
I don't know. That's the other thing, because that was at the start of the economic crisis.
Okay.
In 2007, 2008. So it was a scary time to go back. And so I had that whole year to think of what I was going to do. I never really thought seriously about what I would try to do if I went back to Spain. I would most likely, in the first instance, I would have reached out to my PhD supervisor to see if there was any chance of me getting some job there. But otherwise, I might have gone and studied for a government job, as a teacher, most likely.
So you probably made the right choice then.
I think I did. I miss Spain very much, but...
What would you say you missed the most about Spain?
Just the social life, just the people and the food, very much. But, who knows? I mean, still a fair amount of time till I retire, but I always think that I would like to go back to Spain then. My husband seems convinced.
Tell me about your current position and how
did I get here?
Get into that, because it's not how you
No, it's not how I started. So, as I said, I got a position as a lecturer when I decided to stay. And I was doing some teaching and some research. And then, actually started with research. And then my supervisor, the one who hired me, left the university. And he actually wanted me to go with him, but because of my husband and that thing called love, that wasn't gonna happen. And he made sure I will have still that position for a while. But things were pretty insecure in terms of work, and I wasn't especially happy with the people that I was left with. And one day, I started looking around, and one day my husband came home and said, I saw this position advertised in sustainability. You might want to look into it. And I thought it was interesting. As much as I loved research, having a practical application, and knowing that you're doing something that has tangible outcomes was appealing to me. And obviously sustainability is aligned to what I was doing, which was in marine conservation. So, it's in the same area anyway. And I decided to apply for the position. It was my first job application and interview in Australia. And that's a difference with Spain as well, because I love the way you do it here with the selection criteria and actually explaining everything. In Spain, you would do a very short letter and send your CV, and that's it. So that was a good experience. The application itself made me think a lot of how to, be flexible with the skills I had and all that. Obviously, my current boss thought I could do the job. Mm-hmm. He then confessed after hiring me that he thought I was overqualified. But, and that's a thing, I know many people worry about that. But my point is that I wouldn't have applied if I didn't want the job. And there is nothing wrong with good, excellent skills in something. So, So he hired me. I don't think he regrets it, since I've been here for now, 13 years.
And maybe could you just explain a little bit of what your role consists of?
So what my role is now, and it has morphed a bit. I used to be a bit of, do everything at all times, and because I have a scientific background, I steered myself and somehow got into all the data collection and analysis and reporting.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody else in the team was very happy that I took that space. So I do things like the whole of the university greenhouse gas inventory, which is a lot of work for our carbon neutral certification application. We're very proud to say we are one of 3 carbon neutral certified universities in Australia. And I do all sorts of data surveys for travel behavior or sustainability surveys, sustainability literacy surveys, and any kind of reporting for ratings and rankings and things like that, it's a really good experience because it covers all sustainability things, and not only what our team is doing, but thinking of sustainability more generally, including all the environmental, social, cultural, economic sustainability. I get to talk to people from pretty much all the departments around UTAS, and it's such a good experience to get them to tell their story and what they are doing, and sometimes they're like, is that sustainability? Yes, that is sustainability. So that's really good to see that realization moment.
Getting back to some of the cultural issues, you mentioned about socializing, social life. What would you say is like the main difference between the way that people in Spain would socialize and Australians or Tasmanians?
I just think it's more casual there. Like things just happen, and here it seems like you kind of have to make an effort to contact with someone and actually do something, and it's also formal. It almost feels like you need to write an application for that. I'm exaggerating, But yeah, it's just that casualness in Spain. It's just like,
Okay.
you go somewhere and people are gonna be there, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it.
What do you think you have maybe changed from living in Launceston in that time?
I'm a nicer person.
What does that mean? In what way do you think?
I'm not as direct as I used to be,
Okay.
especially when writing emails.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I haven't mingled with Australians that much because, being at the university, you get all these people from overseas. And then I married my husband, who's from Chile. So I don't even speak English at home. Most of my Latin American friends are very jealous of that. I don't know if I have changed that much. I'm sure I have. I can't sometimes remember Spanish for my life. And when I speak Spanish, I sometimes use like the English, like I do a direct translation from English, and it sounds really weird. Going back, sorry, I just really need to say this. When you asked about the differences that I found when I came here the first time, I just thought this country, like people in the country, were a bit more sexist than I thought they would be.
Okay.
And that really shocked me when I arrived, because I wasn't expecting it. And I don't know, sexism is everywhere. I'm not saying we don't have that in Spain.
Yeah.
But it was a bit shocking at the time.
And how did that manifest itself?
To give you a very specific example, I remember talking to a colleague when close to when I married my husband, and talking about kids and saying that I would come back to work, as soon as I could. And my colleague being very surprised that I would want to do that.
You sort of mentioned missing the food. Are there some regional specialities in Galicia?
There are regional specialities everywhere. In Galicia, we are big on shellfish. The difference being that we like shellfish. We don't like to put many things on shellfish, like sauces and things like that. So if anything, we put some lemon on it, and that's it.
Okay.
Or white wine. Then we have a few regional dishes that are a bit, I don't know how to translate, but kind of a stew with a specific vegetable that you can't buy here, and pork. Chorizo obviously is a big thing there. And then we have the Spanish omelette. That's not a Galician thing, that's all Spain. But not that many people know what a Spanish omelette is here, and it's the best thing ever. Like, I don't understand why paella gets all the merit when the Spanish omelette is so much better.
Yeah.
But a Spanish omelette I can cook here, so
Yeah, it's relatively simple, isn't it?
It's simple. I mean, it requires some skill, but it's simple. It's just eggs, potato, and salt. And there's this big argument in Spain whether to put onion or not in it. So we have 4 different official languages in Spain. So Spanish, who everybody knows. Catalonian is also quite known. And then we have the País Basque language, which is very different to any other language in the world, and no one knows exactly where it comes from. And then Galician, which is the one from my region. So there is a very specific definition for language and for dialect. And I don't remember it all, but one important one is about literature and having written literature historically, which we have. And Galician was actually the first language in the times of Alfonso X, so that's medieval ages, but he will write poetry in Galician language.
Okay.
So we have a long history, and it is definitely a language, and it's co-official, even if some people in Spain don't want to recognize it or admit it. There are some issues there. But yeah, never ever call it dialect ever again.
Because it's probably the one that would be least known outside of Spain.
Yeah, we are very reserved people in Galicia.
And do you learn that at school separate from Spanish?
Yes, we do. I should probably also say that through history, Galician and other official languages were forbidden. And that includes the times of, if I'm not mistaken, the times of the Catholic kings, for example. And then with Franco wanted, Spain one and only.
So it's ironic that he came from Galicia then.
Well, yeah, So my grandparents actually will speak to me in Spanish and not in Galician, even if they will speak Galician between them. Galician only started to be taught at school when I was studying school.
Okay.
So, not long after Franco died, but it took a while. But my oldest sister, who's 11 years older than me, didn't study Galician at school.
Yeah, so the older generation missed out. And now
people will still speak it, especially in small villages. And
Okay.
That's how you maintain the language. But then there is a lot of variation. Like with every language, there is variation in the different regions.
And how does it differ from Spanish?
Well, I always say that it's between Portuguese and Spanish, because it kind of is, and we are in between. But the same way that Catalonian is kind of between Spanish and French, and it has a lot of French influence because they are in the border. So I can understand Portuguese if they don't speak too fast. I can read Portuguese. I have read books in Portuguese.
Thank you for listening to another episode of 177 Nations of Tasmania. Don't forget you can also follow us on Spotify, Facebook and Twitter. Just look up 177 Nations of Tasmania. And thank you again for listening.